Hello, everyone, and welcome to my master class. We started a bit late in deference to Grandmasters Wesley So and Shakman Midarov, who are playing a blitz match, and everybody, including ourselves, here at the chessbrah. What can I call it? Palace? No, chessbrah home. Um, was watching. So we were figured that, well, a lot of our audience would like to watch those two play live. So we delayed the show by 30 minutes. In any case, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with me. As today, I would like, in this series, as usual, to simply concentrate on the elements and to learn what they are and how to utilize the elements in our games. So this class is going to be about the element of time, also known as development. And what is time in development? What am I very specifically referring to? So when we look at the starting position of a game of chess, we really have to imagine it as two armies. This is a game of war. And quite simply, it's white's army versus black's army. And when the game of chess begins, you have to think about your pawns and pieces. Notice that I said pawns and pieces are in their barracks. They're asleep. And it's up to you as a good general to deploy them, to bring them out of their barracks. And we say when we make a move in chess that we use a tempo. That move, knight on g1 to f3, that cost us a tempo. So in every position from the opening, you have to determine how you want to spend your tempo. You can spend it wisely, and you can spend it poorly. For example, knight f3, knight f6. In the time count, it's 1-to-1. Should you play knight e5, forgetting that you're not playing a bug house game, you have squandered a tempo by moving your knight for the second time. And then after, for example, a move like d6, now that you realize you're not playing a bug house match and you're not going to get any pieces, you'll withdraw your knight. So exactly at this moment, white has won. In the time count, black has 2, black to move. So black plays a good move, bishop to g4, developing a piece. It's now 3-to-1. White plays the move h2, h3, attacking, and it's 3-2. In my way of thinking, this would be a poor move. Bishop takes f3, e takes f3, and suddenly it's 2-2 in the time count. Both players have 2 units that are not on their original squares. This brings up the concept of castling and why castling is such a powerful device in the opening. It's the only move that allows you to deploy 2 units at once. You get a credit for that. Also, in castling, you get the opportunity of putting your king in a safe place. There is one other rule, that's not really a rule, but there's one other point that's important in the openings. And that's a kind of a concept of the undeveloped piece playing an effective role. Right now it's 2-2. Let's imagine a poor move by black. Bishop takes g3, h takes g3. So of course now the time count is 2-1 in white's favor. But at the same time, when we look at this rook on h1, it has not moved. But we think that the rook is very effective. So we give white credit for having developed the piece without having developed a piece. The rook on h1, because it's useful, because it's effective, because it's playing a role in the attack, we're going to give him credit, and we're going to say that in this exact position, white leads the time count 3-1. Using your tempo well, using your tempi, the plural of tempos, well in the opening is what will make you a good opening player. And a player who deploys his pieces faster than his opponent is not going to only get an advantage. More than likely, the advantage is going to be decisive, especially if black also squanders further time. To my way of thinking, one of the greatest games that depicts time and development is a game that we all know. It's Paul Morphy versus the Count and the Duke in the Opera House. And I love showing the game because no matter how often I show the game, I always find persons who not only are not familiar with the game, even those people who are familiar with the game don't know a trick that Paul Morphy missed. Afterwards, I'll tell you what the trick is. Okay, we have e4 by Paul Morphy, and in this game, he was playing against two players tandem, Count and a Duke, and e5, knight f3, d6, the so-called Philidor's defense, as black defends his pawn with his d-pawn, d4. Notice it's 3-2. A very good move for black would now be knight f6. Or even capturing this pawn would be good. Bishop g4, a bad move. Bobby Fischer himself, quite the authority, said a weak move already in describing this move, bishop g4. Well, why is this a weak move? No question, it pins the knight to the queen, but after the straightforward capture, recapturing would cost black a pawn. This would be a terrible move for black. Not only would he lose a pawn, pardon me, but his game would be threatened as well. Black was forced to capture on f3, queen takes f3, pawn takes e5, and after bishop c4, we note 1, 2, 3 in the development count versus 1. Knight f6. Now, queen b3. In principle, this is a move that would violate the development count, because in principle, you don't want to move the same piece twice in the opening. In this case, white moves his queen twice, but he does so for a very, very specific reason. He has a double attack in the position. He's threatening the pawn on f7 with a check, as well as queen takes b7, and potentially even winning a rook. So the move queen b3 is a very powerful double attack. Queen e7, knight c3. Morphy could capture this pawn, but then after queen b4 check, he'd be forced to trade queens, and black would emerge a pawn down in a bad position for sure. Oops, I hate that when I hit the wrong key. Queen e7, knight c3. So with the pawn hanging, queen e7, and now protects the pawn on b7, bishop g5. And now again, we go to Bobby Fischer, and he chimes in with a comment. Black is in what's like a Zugzwang position here. He can't develop the queen's knight because the pawn is hanging. The bishop on f8 is blocked because of the queen. So black is really, he just doesn't have very beneficial moves. b5, attacking the bishop. And now, white could simply retreat the bishop, but thanks to the fact, 1, 2, 3, his development is so good versus black's development. Keep in mind, black's two minor pieces are on the original squares. That Paul Morphy saw that he could sacrifice a piece with knight takes b5 and follow up with castles. And again, I do this very consciously at the board. I do count the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My king has also moved from its original square. 6 to 1, 2, 3, whoops, 1, 2, come on, there you go, highlight 4. So white is considerably ahead in the time count. In view of the threat by white to capture on f6, black reinforced his knight with the move rook d8, and then Morphy uncorked a very nice sacrifice, rook takes d7, rook takes d7, rook d1. White is threatening bishop takes f6, followed by bishop takes d7 check, completely winning position. Black's so far behind in development that the game is over. Queen e6, takes, and now this beautiful finish. Queen b8 check, and rook d8 mate. This is such an aesthetically pleasing game. The final position, white has all of his pieces developed, and somehow it's very picturesque that only the bishop on g5 and the rook on d8 is what white has left of his army, that it's enough to checkmate and win the game. This is such an aesthetically pleasing game that it's been used countless times. I would say that more or less it's the most well-known game ever. I can't think of another game that has its equal in that regard. I told you I'd deliver a little secret. First of all, I just wanted to say, how many of you knew this game? I mean, I want to see some yeses, and if anybody didn't know this game, I'm just a little bit curious. Bad X says, evergreen game. Oh yes, I knew it. A nice no, thank you. I am hypnosis. No. Oh, okay. Saw it 50 years ago. So yes, I knew it. Never too late. Very, very good. The immortal game, indeed. I tend to think of it as just that. And you know, it's funny about this immortal game that everybody knows, but here's a little insight you probably didn't know. Morphy played the move knight c3 and went on to win a brilliancy that everybody's familiar with. The strangest thing is the best move in the position is actually bishop takes f7 check. That's a real surprise when people see that for the very first time. There's no choice. You take the bishop. Now white wins simply by capturing this pawn on b7. There's a dual threat of queen c8 check and queen takes a8. White will also very quickly castle. So he'll be up an exchange in 2 pawns in no time. But imagine if Morphy played bishop takes f7 and won the game. Nobody would have ever remembered it. And imagine that after knight c3, c6, bishop g5, the royals had played the move queen b4 check. I mean, then after, for example, queen takes b4 and c3, white would have won a game that, once again, nobody would have ever remembered. So it's kind of a funny mix there. That bishop takes f7 was probably the best move, and it would have been an immortal game, and queen b4 check was probably the best defensive move, and then again it wouldn't be an immortal game. So the reason I just refreshed your minds about this game is, again, it's just such an outstanding example of why you want to develop your pieces as quickly as possible in the opening. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm never going to play a game like this. The defensive techniques of today's players are simply too good. Everybody knows about time and development. I couldn't catch a colleague in such a style as Paul Morphy, but I did. And this is my ode to Morphy. This is a game that was played in 1990. It was actually kind of a funny game. It was probably one of my career highlights. In 1990, in winter, December of 1990, I played Grandmaster Jan Timman a match in Hilversum, Holland, and it was billed the best of the West, the highest rated players of the Western world competing against each other. In Hilversum, the KRO, the Christian Broadcasting radio station, sponsored a match, and he played annual matches. He played matches against Lajos Portish and Michael Tull and Gary Kasparov. And I was one of these many, many matches that Jan played, but was non-Soviet, so best of the West. And at the time of this game, I think I was leading the match 2.5, 1.5. So if I won this game, I would take a 3.5 point lead out of the 6-game match that it was going to be, and I would win. So essentially, a win today clinches me victory. I did win, and the 6th game was a draw. So I won the match 4-2. But the problem was that the match was completely overshadowed by another match that was continuing just down the street there in Lyon, France, as Gary Kasparov won his match 12.5, 11.5 for the World Championship, and all the journalists were over in Lyon. It was like I got no recognition. And in those days, Jan really liked to play the Queen's Indian. He also liked to play the Grunfeld, and he had played the Queen's Indian earlier in the match, and we can see that it's 3-3. Think of the things that this game is going to have in common for a moment with Paul Morphy. You'll see it's actually quite surprising. Okay, I lead 4-3 in the development count, 4-4. Queen b3, I lead again. But with my last move, I'm putting pressure on this bishop, and I hope to win the minor exchange with queen takes without doubling my pawns. c5, a3, bishop a5. So this is an important moment to reflect for a moment. It's my turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm now ahead in the development count because I have put the question to the bishop with the move a2, a3. The bishop has moved again. So according to the way I think of the space development, time development count, I'm ahead. The move a2, a3 is more useful to have the pawn on a3 than a2. The other reason is actually I like having the bishop on a5. Many games have continued like bishop g4, knight c6, when oftentimes the knight is useful on the a5 square as it attacks the queen as well as the pawn. So I nipped that in the bud by first playing a3, provoking the bishop back to a5 and occupying the a5 square. Bishop g5, just developing very, very rapidly. I hate this, sorry about that, folks. I have to be more sophisticated with hitting the buttons. Now, earlier in the match, in game 3, Jan had played the move h6, putting the question to my bishop, and the game had continued bishop h4, a game that I had won. So for this particular game, Jan comes with an improvement. He plays the move knight c6, attacking the pawn on d4. Castles. In the game of Paul Morphy that I just showed you, Paul Morphy also castled long. Now, if it's my turn, a moment ago, the knight on c3 was in a pin to my king. Couldn't move. It was in an absolute pin. Now this knight is actually free to go to e4 and or b5. Hence, captures. So this was all Jan's preparation, and fortunately for me, I should say mine too. If I played the desirable queen takes c3, this was the point of Jan's delaying the move h6. He could now play knight e4. Notice that the knight is in a relative pin. The knight can move, only at the cost of exposing his queen to capture. But the knight move also attacks my queen as it attacks the bishop. If the pawn was on h6 and my bishop were on h4, the knight would not be forking my bishop. In this move, in this position, I played the move d4, d5 to avoid the line with knight e4. And by the way, I see that we're getting some nice subscriptions. Thank you all so very much for this. Let's see, let me just call out some names. Minecraft Linecom, thank you for resubscribing with a Prime. Keep it up. I intend to do precisely that. Checkmo, resubscribed with Prime for 21 months. Thank you. Okaneta has resubscribed with Prime for 10 months. Thank you, Okaneta. And Keto7 gifted a sub to M3GT380 for 9 months. And Keto also gifted a sub to Ivan Droy. And Keto, you look at you, you're gifted 5 subs. Right, 1, 2, 3, no, 4, 5. Did I count that right, Dan? 5 subs by Keto7? So, yeah. Thank you, Keto7, for the support. Yeah, love it. Okay, D4, I'm a piece down, folks. This is not my normal state of happiness here. But thanks to this move, D4, D5, 2 black pieces are on pre. So I am going to win one of my I'm going to win my piece back. Here, Jan thought for a long time and played captures. And as it turns out, this is his only mistake of the game, and a very, very subtle one at that. Subtle in the sense that when Jan captured, his idea was that by removing my my c4 pawn, that my king would be less protected. Bishop e5, he decided, I wanted to say what my main variation was. So my main variation was that if Jan played knight a5, that would be terrible. Takes, oops, black is losing. If black, whoops, interesting, okay. If black had played knight d4, queen takes c3, knight takes, queen takes, oops, again, I'm ahead in the development. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Always count your king when your king has moved. 7 to 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see, thanks to my lead in development, I've already got some pretty harrowing threats in the position, including an ambush attack against the rook. The move that I really had expected, however, was knight e7. Oh, sorry. I just want to refute knight e7. I beg your pardon. Knight e7 is not a very good move. No, hold on. It's with takes, right? Takes. Knight e7, not a very good move because, oops, that pin, this is a constant tactic in the position, capturing this pawn, attacking this rook. So black has to avoid this line. My main line was bishop takes b2. This was the pawn sacrifice line. Queen takes b2, knight to e7. Now here, I really thought that I could just play the move e4. If I wanted, I could play bishop takes f6, g takes f6, queen takes f6, knight g6 with a good game. I like my position, but I wanted to play the move e4 in case of knight takes e4, d6. And again, this position where queen takes g7 is a kind of a killer, I want to say. So that was why Jan captured. And I believe I just got something else that happened. Bad Axe 99 also gifted 5 subscriptions. Thank you, Bad Axe. And that's very, very nice to support the channel like this. Okay, so this is where Jan retreated his bishop. I took his knight, regaining the piece, and now queen e7. And here I went into a great think. This was a very, very, very difficult moment for me. And I'd like you to think about it for a minute or two. And I'm going to call upon you to give me what we would call candidate moves. What moves, if you were in white shoes, what moves would you play? What moves do you find attractive? And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. To 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have a lead in development and how to exploit that lead in development. Mayor Grumpsy is offering knight takes e5, as is Y. Milikow. Lots of people like knight takes e5, e4, f6 takes d7, g2, g3. So c takes d7, knight takes e5, bishop takes f6, c takes d7, queen e7, queen b5, queen e3, rook d5. Right. Red Bun says e3 or e4. I'd have to check first hand. 4. Queen e3. Maybe Michael Tal style. Rook takes d7. c7. Please go rook d5. Okay. So it's interesting that for me, the first move that I looked at was knight takes e5. I really wanted to play this move. It felt so right. First of all, according to Bobby Fischer, I win the minor exchange by winning the bishop. But it wasn't so much about the minor exchange, winning the bishop, that made this situation so attractive to me. It was right here, the very next move, my follow-up move. And the follow-up move I had in mind was f2, f4. Why? Because I'm trying to win a tempo. I'm trying to get ahead in the development count, in the time count. When I play the move f4, not only do I defend the bishop, but I force black's queen to go back. So in my mind, the way I play chess, this was a real positive. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and black is forced to move his queen. The problem is that he moves his queen all right, but he does so with a gain of tempo himself. He plays queen to e6, attacking my queen, and after any trades, a situation like this, I come to a dead end. And I was thinking, well, if I don't play the move g3, how do I get in e4? How do I develop my bishop? Should I just trade and trade? And I don't know. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about knight e4. And I began to think that the very, very desirable move, knight takes e5, wasn't best. So if knight takes e5 isn't best, how do I exploit my development edge? And it occurred to me that, as weird as it is, I could play the move rook d3. I mean, isn't that a weird move? Like, rook d3, what kind of move is that? He doesn't want me to take his bishop. He would like to move his bishop away. But wait a minute, rook e3, the cure is worse. Rook e3 destroys the move bishop c7. After castles, rook e3, d6. I've won again the minor piece exchange, but after all of these moves, I don't know. I kind of regret my own development. I don't feel that in this position I have a particularly large advantage with no development. Sure, I'm a pawn ahead, but I thought that the worst is over for black. So then I thought, what about trying to exploit my development in another way? What about queen a4? I saw that some people had suggested both queen b5. Thank you, Lord Turbottom, for that suggestion. Queen a4 or queen b5, same idea. Again, this was another move I really resisted. Why? Because I really don't like moving a piece that I've already developed for a second time. I thought after castles, I could win a pawn, but then again, black has these two bishops, pretty nice, two bishops. This pawn is going to be maybe hard to keep, and it might even happen that a c5, c4 will expose my king. Man, was I frustrated. I was really, really, really frustrated. And so, after spending gobs of time, I came up with what I think was a really, really good move that violated all the principles that I'd like you to learn. I played c6 takes d7, moving a pawn that I have put so much energy in. I mean, I went c4, c takes d5, d5 takes c6, c6 takes d7. I mean, that pawn has zigzagged his way all up the board, and after bishop takes d7, the lion's share of my advantage in time, in development, had disappeared. However, I reasoned that I should do this because I forced black's bishop onto a square, the d7 square, where it's most vulnerable. And I played the move e2, e3. Very, very modest, quiet move, but I'd like to ask you what you think black should do. What do you think in this exact moment black can do for a move? Okay, Babas, think about it. If black were to castle, remember when I said I lured that bishop to d7, any castles short by black would cost him a piece, right? After castles, oops, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes d7, oops, I'm a whole bishop ahead to the good. There is no castling here for black. What if black were to castle long? How could I deal with castles long? Looking for a good answer. How could I deal with castles long? Exactly. Thank you, Zachary Cat. And Flopsy F4. You bet. Bishop A6 check. And now we understand why I played E2, E3 and not E2, E4 a moment ago. After knight takes E5, queen takes E5, the queen is dragged to her doom on this H2, B8 diagonal. So black can't castle short, black can't castle long. If he moves the bishop, I have bishop takes f6 and queen d5. Oops. So after e3, as Bobby said about Paul Morphy's game, black is in a strange zugzwang, and black played the move rook d8. Thank you, Zachary Cat, once again. Rook d8. And now I challenge the audience once more, keeping in mind that this game is called Ode to Paul Morphy. What did I do? What did I do? Analyze the lines as far as you can. You bet. You guys are seeing it now. Now it all makes really perfect sense. Rook takes d7. You bet. Bam. Like that Paul Morphy game, that knight on f6 is in a pin. It can't take the rook. In the game, you can't take with the queen because the queen needs to guard the bishop. Oh, pardon me, not the bishop. Here, I apologize. First, I got the move bishop b5. In the game, Jan recaptured with the rook. What would have happened if he had taken with the king? What would you do if he takes with the king? Thank you, Hippo. That was my question. What if king takes d7? Bishop b5 check again. You bet. Bishop b5 check again. The king cannot go to c7 because once again, we've seen this queen, when it's on the same diagonal as the king, it gets captured. So what happens after king c8? White to play. Yes, yes, correct. Bishop a6 check. King back to d7. Now, what should white do after king to d7? Queen b5 checks, checks, checks. rook d1 check, queen b5. My intention in the game, and there are many winning moves. Queen b5 check is a winning move. My intention in the game was to capture the bishop and then capture on f7. He can't move his king here. I've got check, and it's like a bad dream. This bishop keeps winning the queen, and if he blocks with the queen, then I have rook to d1 check, winning. So in the game, Jan took with the rook, and I, of course, played bishop b5. And again, you see the same types of tactics that occurred in the Paul Morphy game, where I'm ready to play moves like knight takes e5 and bishop takes d7. So Jan covered up as best he could with the move bishop d6. So again, the whole lesson here today is about time and development. You get no credits whatsoever for being wrong. There's only one really good move, and that is, what is White's really good move? I'm ready. Thank you so much. Rook d1, of course, bringing everybody to the party. That was the only piece that I had not developed. Now rook to d1, and we can see all kinds of really, really nasty pins coming into the position against black. Castles. After castles, I took a rook. Queen takes. And now you see that this queen is on this terrible, in a terrible pin. I played bishop f4, attacking this bishop. So any knight moves, like knight e8, defending this bishop, or knight e4, both knight moves are met by queen d5, and black is lost. So Jan played the move c4 in order to stop me from playing queen d5. Of course, I cannot capture this pawn. That would be egregious error. And I played queen c2, stopping any potential of knight e4. And in the meantime, hello, I'm trying to win a piece. Knight e8. And now, it's up to you. You imagine that you had this position at the chessboard. What move would you make as white? What move would you make as white? We got some, Dan, we got some players here today. Knight g5. Congratulations. Absolutely. Knight g5. Just because you develop the piece doesn't necessarily make the piece effective. In this case, our knight came to f3. It was biding its time very, very nicely, ready to jump into battle. And this move, knight g5, is simply a crushing blow. There are two threats now that white possesses. Queen takes h7 check and mate, as well as knight on g5, retreating to e4, which would nail this bishop on d6. Jan played the move f5. I played queen takes f7 check, king h8. I took, queen b5, rook d8. And what is white's winning move? What move did I now play to win the game? Remember, knight f7 check Queen takes f7. Oops. Knight takes f7 check. Queen takes f7, and I lose the game. No knight f7 check. Queen takes d6. Exclam. Yeah, baby. Queen takes d6. Queen takes d6. Queen takes d6. Shockingly, if I play queen takes d6, I also lose the game. Oops. Oops. Knight f7 check. I lose the game to queen takes f7, and unfortunately, the knight protects the rook. There is no back rank mate. Jan had set a devilish trap. If I had played queen takes d6 with the brilliant, or less than brilliant, idea of knight f7 check, winning the game, Jan has the move queen c8 check with a discovery against my queen. King over, knight, rook takes, king g8, getting out of the knight f7 check business. And if I try to play knight e6, then it's queen versus rook and knight, and black's queen is much more powerful. So now we know there's two losing moves, knight f7 and knight e6. Pardon me, knight f7 and queen d6. Those are both losing moves. So what move did I play? Zardine! He hit it. Velamek, he hit it right on the next margin. Knight e6. Thank you, blunder woman. You bet. Knight e6 attacks the rook. If the rook moves, let's say rook check, king. If rook tries to protect the knight, whoops. Knight to d8 attacks the rook. Now I have all of those tricks that I had before. So Jan in this position played queen c8 check, king over, rook d7. What move did I play to win the game? What move did I play to win the game? I would have fallen for the queen takes d6 trap. Thank you, Tapani. I had to respect my yes, mono Twitch. Yes. The loyal map maker. Queen takes d6. Rook takes d6. Rook takes d6. Actually, Jan resigned when I played queen takes d6. But now there is nothing he can do to stop rook d8. I'll emerge a piece ahead, and this game won me the match. The last game of the match was drawn, and I won the match 4-2. Like I said, one of my really great career results, unnoticed because of the World Championship match. You saw a lot of similarities to the game with Paul Morphy, and that game of Paul Morphy inspires me even today. I saw it 45 years ago or more, and it inspires me even today. It keeps inspiring generations of players. But as you play over these Grandmaster games and your own games, make a conscious effort of keeping track of the time and development element. If you're ahead in development, seek to open up the game and take advantage of your superior development. If you're behind in development, well, practice developing your people.